In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Please be seated. As many of you that know me know that I like to fish and would probably call myself a fisherman. Not a good one, but a fisherman. And one thing that all fishermen know is that when you fish, and especially since you do it as a child, from a cane pole to a rod and finally to a fly rod, the one thing that you know is that fishing is frustrating and rewarding. It can be very frustrating. Very, very frustrating at times that you basically want to give it up. And then all of a sudden you have a catch and you're ready to do it again. Over and over this cycle happens. I had frustrating and rewarding experiences a couple times in my life that were huge. And one was when I went fishing in the Panama Canal. And that day we were out there from early morning about 6 until late in the evening. And the only thing I caught was a sunburn. But at the very end, we tried one more place, and suddenly we were just pulling them in, left and right. It was absolutely incredible in the last 30 minutes of our fishing. And suddenly, where I was ready to stop fishing, I suddenly wanted to fish some more. The other time I had, for an example, was when I've told you all this story before. It's when I was in Alaska last year. We got there a day late because of the weather, and we all wanted to get to the river. And so finally we threw all our gear down, and we got to the river, got everything ready, and we got out there and started casting. We were just going, and just as soon as one of the people threw his line out, he gets a salmon. And if you've ever been fishing with people and a salmon or a fish is caught, it excites everyone, and you cannot wait to catch your fish. Suddenly, and almost immediately, the person on my left catches one, then on my right. And all of a sudden, this is what's going on, and I keep flying, and I take my fly rod harder and harder and trying to get it out there and changing flies to see what's going on. And I'm not kidding you, the more people were catching, the more frustrated I was getting. So much that if you know Ken Bailey was doing his fly rod in which he backcast and caught it on something. And I heard him say, "Oh, great." And so he goes to get it off a log or whatever it is, and as he's pulling in his line, he realizes he's caught a fish. I kid you not, I've never seen anybody catch one going into a back cast. But Ken did, and then I really was mad. And so this continued on until I finally threw my rod down in the water and said, I could do this at home. I could catch nothing in my own house if I wanted to. But finally I picked it up, washed it off, and I continued to fly fish until right before we were leaving, I got a hit. And it was probably the biggest fish that I had caught for that entire week. Where I was frustrated and ready to give up, I continued a little further down, and suddenly the reward was there. One of the things that it taught me was don't give up. Never, ever give up. If there's something you want, you need to continue until you get it. You never can give up when it comes to fishing. And what's true about fishing, and the big goal that you try to do, is that you have to look for the right place at the right time. That's the secret of fishing, if you can find it. The right place at the right time. And this lesson was no different in Alaska. For the rest of the week, it was funny how it seemed like one of us at a time would have that frustrating day while the rest of us had a good time. Well, we would get to the river, and suddenly we were catching fish. And then all of a sudden they would stop. And you're trying to figure out what you're doing wrong, we're redoing flies, and then we go out and we cast again. I'm not kidding you, there were times that you saw the salmon, and you threw your line out, and they wouldn't bite. And I kid you not, there were several times we caught them by their tails. And just as we said, let's go somewhere else, they start biting again. Frustration and reward. Well, while you're waiting for that right place at the right time, what you're doing is casting. You're casting over and over and over again. Why? Because all fishermen know if you stop casting or you don't cast at all, you're guaranteed not to catch a fish. you have to continue to throw it out there. This is what we see in the gospel today. Jesus is speaking to the disciples as well as so many of the followers. It says that he goes from the house down to the Sea of Galilee. And you can imagine him going down, basically some of the cliff areas, get down to the beach itself, in which all of a sudden people start coming from all over. This was quite common in Jesus' time, because if villages heard a rabbi coming, they wanted to listen to him. And so when they heard Rabbi Jesus is out there, they want to hear him speak of the words of God. In Israel, they would talk about the words of God is like honey pouring out of the rabbi's mouth. And they want to receive and taste every bit of it. And so no wonder you see these crowds that would come to the banks of the sea. And there it says he gets into a boat and he casts off a little bit from them. The reason he does this is not to get away from the crowd, or they smell, or it was just too many people. What you'll find at the Sea of Galilee is in certain spots, if you get off onto the water itself, it becomes an amphitheater. And people can actually hear you a lot better. Between the water itself and the cliff, or the beach itself, it would actually, you can hear so much better. And matter of fact, I heard a minister recently talking, he had taken his church to Israel. And he was at the Sea of Galilee. And there he rented a boat for a few minutes from a local fisherman. And he got in the boat and he cast himself off. And he decided to read about one of the stories of the Sea of Galilee by just his natural voice. And it came out like he had a microphone. So this is what we see Jesus doing. And also in typical fashion of Jesus' time, the rabbi sat down while the people stood up. Why? Because it's the Word of God. And so that's what we see this morning. Jesus is there to teach them, the disciples as well as the followers, about spreading the kingdom of God. You see, it's all of their job to spread the kingdom of God, and he wants them to understand it. But he also knows there's going to be times that his disciples are going to get frustrated. It's not going to always work out the way they want. And some days there's going to be rewards for it. And so he doesn't want them to give up. He wants them to continue casting or throwing out seed. And so he teaches them through parables. Remember, parables are stories of pictures. And pictures that they would understand. And so he talks about farming. Why? Because if they weren't farmers, they knew somebody who was. They understood farming very well among their families. Not only that, but there would be paths, if you ever traveled from one village to another, paths about this size, no wider than this, but sometimes even smaller, would cut right through people's farms. Not like today where you see them basically in squares or rectangles, but it would actually come right through the crop area. So every day, when you're walking from village to village, you would see the farmer throwing seed. You would see the farmer watering. You would see the farmer gathering and harvesting. You would see this stuff every season and know what's going on. So Jesus wants to use this picture of the farmer. So you can imagine him as he's getting out onto the boat. And he goes and he sits down and they stand up. He says, "Listen." And they all turn to the rabbi. He said, "Listen, a sower went to sow." He tells about the farmer sowing the seeds in the field. Again, they would have been able to picture it, but not only throwing the seed, he goes on to tell them about the different types of soil that would have been on a common farm in the time of Israel. He goes on to say some of the seed fell on the path. Remember, we just talked about the path that cuts right through where the crops are. It fell on the path, and the birds came and ate them up. And he goes on to explain when someone hears the word of the kingdom and does not understand it or doesn't really respond to it, it could be the evil one coming and snatching away what has been sown into the heart. And that way, they may just walk away. It's the same as the birds taking the seed from the path. Other seeds fell on rocky ground. There would have been rocky outcroppings out there where they did not have much soil. And so it says it sprang up quickly in the evening moisture. And since they had no depth of soil, when the sun rose, they would be scorched and they would be gone. And since they had no root, it would just wither away. This is the one who hears the word and immediately receives it with joy. Yet such a person has no root, but endures only for a little while. And when trouble or persecution arises on account of the word, that person immediately falls away. He goes on to explain, seeds fell among the thorns, something very common out in the fields, thorns. And the thorns grew up, and it chokes the plants. As for what was sown among the thorns, this is the one who hears the word, but the cares of the world and the lure of wealth choke the word, and they yield zero. But there's also seeds that fall on good soil and brought forth grain. But for these people, it is for what it was sown on good soil. This is the one who hears the word and understands it, who indeed bears fruit and yields, in one case 100-fold, another 60, another 30. In Jesus' time, the people would have really listened to that because the common yield to a plant was 7 to 10 yield, not 100. Can you imagine? Instead of 10 cents, I'm going to give you $100. You know, I mean, it's huge. And so they would have grabbed it. You see, what he's trying to teach them is as they go spreading the kingdom of God, it's just like a field. And there is going to be different soils depending on the person. So they can't give up. Some people, we all know this, there are different soils in ministry, isn't there? If you've ever done this, you know what I'm talking about. There are some people who will listen to what you have to say. They'll listen to your story. They'll listen about your church. And they're like, yeah, okay, that sounds nice. But that's as far as it goes. They don't pay any more attention to it and will walk away. Some may even get excited. We've seen people who get really excited about the church. They just join and they're so excited they start joining everything and all the programs that they possibly can. But suddenly, things happen in their life or something changes and you don't see them anymore because there's no real depth in what they're doing. They just wanted to belong to something instead of seeing the big picture. And that can be frustrating too. Or there are some who are true believers and they really do believe in God and they love God and they want a relationship with God and they love the church. But because of the world pulls them away to do other things. And we will see them come and worship God, usually about Easter or Christmas, because the world just keeps them away. But for many, people will hear the word and they come to Christ and they do belong to programs and they see the bigger picture and they understand it, so they stay and they help and they start to yield. In other words, they start giving and they're giving and spreading the kingdom of God. What Jesus is teaching his disciples and his followers is to never stop. Don't get frustrated at the times that there may be an outcropping or thorns or a path, but you need to keep going. That's what it's about. You need to understand the farmer. You see, in the rocky soil, the sower keeps sowing. The path in the middle of the field, the sower keeps sowing. And the thorns, the sower keeps sowing. You see, throwing seed everywhere was a common practice of farming in Israel. What they truly believed is you throw it and you invest everywhere on your property. You throw that seed all over, and then you let God grow that plant. Get it? You see what I'm saying? Our job is to throw the seed and let God take over from there. To work and to water the plants and to cultivate and to take care of them, but let God grow the plants. You see, it is so important that you just have to throw and give trust to God. So my question today is, so where do you sow? Where do you throw seed? Is it in our homes? Maybe among our families? Is it with our friends? Is it with our community? Or sadly, maybe it's not at all. And that happens too, doesn't it? Why? Because sometimes we can get frustrated. Maybe we have thrown seed before. Maybe in our younger days we did, or we have tried to step out on that ledge and told people about our story or about the church. and it didn't quite work out. For some reason, there are times in our life that we may have gotten brave enough to share our faith with others. But maybe you were rejected, or maybe laughed at. Or maybe you really talked to people and they sounded very interested about coming to your church and hearing about your story, and they take a real interest in what you're saying. And I say, I'm going to be there. I will come and I'm going to be part of your church. I'm going to be there on Sunday. And they don't show up. And it's frustrating because you spent all that time. But what Jesus would tell you is you need to keep throwing if you want the seeds to grow. You need to keep casting if you want to catch a fish. You can't stop. Trust me, the reason I'm bringing this up is I've heard from some people before recently about this and how frustrating it can be when people have tried to share their faith. But I tell them, trust me, it happens all the time. You know, when I'm in this community, I talk to people, whether it's at the bank or whether I've at a real estate place or all kinds of different things, and talk to people and shake hands. And I will tell them who I am, and I tell them what I do. I'm quite proud to be the priest of Holy Trinity by the Lake, and I have no problem letting people know that and inviting them to come to church. Just recently, I was at a restaurant, and Karen needed a Coke, so I went up to the bar. And while I was up there, it took quite a while to get the Coke, so I had time to have a conversation with this couple that was sitting there eating. And I introduced myself, and they introduced themselves, and then I told them what I did. And suddenly, they began to tell me about their church they used to go to and what happened. Started telling me about their journey and some of the disappointments that they've had. And we began to talk theology and why this is happening. And it was a great conversation, and I'm sure Karen was thinking, where is my Coke? I should have done it myself. But I did talk to them. And matter of fact, before the evening was done, I talked to 3 couples and talking to them about their journey. What I'm saying is it happens all the time. I've been to some of your parties at your house, in which your friends are there. And when they hear that I'm a priest, it's amazing how many will come and talk to me. It's like being a doctor and say, you know, my elbow's been hurt for the last 2 weeks. Can you tell me about it? Oh, I hear you're a priest. Yes, I know what's coming there. You know, let me ask you a question. And it would always, what I'm saying is people really do want to know about your church. People really want to know about your journey. People want to know about your faith. It may not come out the way you want it to, but it doesn't mean you stop throwing the seed. You see, our job is not to have the luxury of being an armchair quarterback, judging others in the way that we think their journey needs to be with God. After all, isn't it enough for us to examine our own soil without judging the soil of somebody else? You don't know where that journey is. They may come to your church. They may find one of their own. You don't know that 5 years from now they may remember that conversation and that's where things changed for them. You don't know what God has in store, nor are you supposed to know. What you're supposed to do is throw the seed. Jesus says that the harvest is plentiful, and I believe He is correct. It's all around us. Keep throwing. The people are there. Keep throwing. The people are searching. Keep throwing because people are seeking God. Keep casting because if you don't cast, you will not catch a fish. It is during this time of Pentecost that we truly need to think about this and to see where the Spirit is leading us. What part of the river is God taking us to talk to people? We need to truly pay attention to that. We need to pay attention to what God is calling us to do and who to talk to. You may not think it's the right person, but in fact it may be. You don't know where God is leading you. And as we're coming up to this fall, when people are starting to come back from vacation and school's beginning again, maybe it's time to tell people your story. They may not come here. I hope they do. But you don't know what God has in store for them. and you need to throw that seed. You don't know the fish, or you don't know the person that God is presenting to you. Nor do you need to know. Your job is to keep throwing and keep casting until the reward is there. Amen.